Donald Trump has been barred from standing for election in Colorado next year after the state's Supreme Court ruled the former president engaged in the 2021 July the 6th Capitol riot. It's the first ever use of the constitutional insurrection clause used to disqualify a presidential candidate. It does not stop Trump running in the other states, and his campaign says it will appeal to the US Supreme Court.
This comes as the former president denies having read Hitler's manifesto Mein Kampf after using phrases from the book to describe migrants at a rally in New Hampshire.
It's crazy what's going on. They're ruining our country. And it's true. They're destroying the blood of our country. That's what they're doing. They're destroying our country. They don't like it when I said that. And I never read Mein Kampf. They said, oh, Hitler said that in a much different way. No, they're coming from all over the world, people all over the world. We have no idea. They could be healthy. They could be very unhealthy. They could bring in disease that's going to catch on in our country, but they do bring in crime.
Joining us in the studio now is Chairman of the Republicans Overseas Organisation here in London, Greg Swenson. Welcome, Greg. Now, let's talk about whether or not he's read Mein Kampf. I'd bet my house he hasn't. I bet my house he hasn't read a single book, but there you go. That's a different thing. We'll talk about that in just a second. Yeah. First, probably the more important development, that the Colorado has decided that he can't stand for president there because they have decided he's guilty of a crime he hasn't yet been found guilty of, and that's causing that insurrection on January the 6th back then. I mean, this is... You know, we know about lawfare, the Democrats using lawfare. This is nuclear lawfare, isn't it? And I don't think it can stand this decision.
It likely won't. It might encourage other states to try the same trick. And they've tried it and been turned down in Minnesota and New Hampshire and other states, Michigan, for example. So, you know, they've tried it elsewhere. It's failed. This time they had some success. I don't think it makes it through the Supreme Court, obviously. But it just shows you that the Democrats are really worried. They don't think they can beat Trump. They surely can't beat another candidate with the ballot box. So they're weaponizing the justice system to do the same thing. And you know, Kevin, I don't necessarily support, I would prefer a different candidate than President Trump, but that doesn't mean that I see removing him from the ballot as the proper way to do that.
I mean, this surely plays into Trump's rhetoric that they try and rig elections if they're actively trying to block a particular candidate. But we had a political analyst on in the first half of this show who said, well, hold on, maybe this is what the Democrats want, because strategically, Trump has sort of disappeared from the headlines, and now all of a sudden he's big, he's back, he's everywhere, he's at rallies, he's wiping the floor when it comes to press attention with his rivals, and that the Democrats might be calculating, well, this gives us our best chance.
Alex, it's a great point, and I've been arguing this for 6 months, ever since the first indictment, the Alvin Bragg indictment. You know, CNN had him last March 2 points behind Ron DeSantis. And the Real Clear average had him maybe, you know, Trump 5 points, 10 points ahead of DeSantis. That's a small margin that early. Once the indictment started, the numbers started going up for Trump. It's amazing. And then you had the mugshot, and now you have this. I think his numbers will get a bump from this. The Democrats want him to be the candidate. They view him as the only one that could lose to Trump. But it could backfire on them as well, because you're starting to see him poll ahead of Biden in the general election polls. That's not what they wanted. That's not what they expected. So they'll go nuclear whenever they have to. By any means necessary is the model that they have in the Democratic Party.
As I said to you earlier, Greg, you know, if this decision in Colorado sticks, I mean, first of all, it's not a state he's likely to win anyway, so he could probably stand and it wouldn't really matter. But if America is going to allow courts to disqualify people from standing for president, there goes the American dream. It just died. I mean, the whole point, one of the central concepts of the American dream is anyone, absolutely anyone born in the United States can become president and, of course, stand again. This flies in the face of that in a major way. I just don't think it's going to stand.
Election interference gone wild.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's move on to Mein Kampf now. Yeah. Do you agree with me that when Donald Trump says he's never read Mein
I believe
Kampf.
him.
I believe him.
It's one of those moments where you can really assume that the president's telling the truth. I mean, he's not a reader, and I don't think he's ever claimed to be a massive reader. So the whole thing is taken out of context. And again, it shows you that the Democrats are, A, worried, and B, have nothing else to work on. You know, they're losing the policy debate, they're losing the outcome debate. So all they have is identity politics. So they're going to turn everything that Trump says into.
What they're trying to do, what they're trying to do here is demonize his policies on immigration,
Right.
which I think will prove very popular.
But let's actually be a bit more sanguine about this, because look, I'm a big fan of Trump, and I'm not a big fan of mass migration. But some of the language he does use is quite, you know, in a powder keg environment like America, where everything's seen through the prism of race, using words like disease, using words like, you know, blood poisoning and things like that. It's definitely what Americans might call triggering.
Right.
And he knows what he's doing, doesn't he?
He does, typically, but he is clumsy in his delivery. You know, no one's going to argue he's a great orator, but he also is great at the personality and great at getting people ginned up at rallies. But the shame is that the media in the U.S. is looking at him as the villain, when in fact it's the Biden policies on the border they should be criticizing. 100,000 young people died from fentanyl overdoses in the last 2 years. That's because of Biden's open border policy and the open border left progressive wing of the party. So, you know, that's a real shame that they've twisted something that President Trump has said and made it all about him, when in fact they should be talking about the open border policies that are killing people.
Yeah, 77,000 Americans died from fentanyl overdoses last year, and that fentanyl is coming up from Mexico straight through that porous border. And one of the policies that Joe Biden, should he stand for the presidential election, won't be trumpeting is that he too wants to build a wall.
Yeah, now, but
He does now, yeah.
But he has a chance to change tune on the border, and yet he's still being controlled by the open border left wing of his party. He's polling at 24 on the border and his handling of the border crisis. So this is not just a Republican and Democrat thing. Half the Democrats think he's completely bundled that.
People will be looking at American politics and kind of how cartoonish it's become and how weak America's become on the international stage under the fossil, as I like to call him, and thinking what we need is a strong leader who stands up for America and stands up for Western values. Who would be your pick among the Republican nominees?
For me, definitely Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida. I think he'd be a better president than Trump, but also more disciplined and less chaotic. And I think he could actually get the things done that
He's not going to get a nomination,
Well,
though.
that's a big challenge, because you know, once these indictments started, you saw Trump's numbers shoot straight up.
Just
So
before you go,
I
Greg,
think you're right, Kevin.
a last final sort of overarching question. Let's assume that, and I think he will, that Trump gets the Republican nomination and the Democrats fail to dissuade old Joe from standing, stubborn old Joe. He wants to stand. If he does win that election, he'll be 86 by the time he leaves the White House.
Might be in the White House in the sky.
If it's a run-in, if it's a race between Trump and Biden, I say Trump wins.
Trump will win. 6 months ago on both of your shows, I was saying Trump will lose in the general election. The Democrats want him to be the candidate. I think that's backfired. I think that Trump could beat Biden, but generic Democrat beats Trump by 8 points. In the same polls that have Trump up 4 over Biden, they have generic Democrat up 8. So both parties are making a mistake here. This is a complete disaster car crash coming. 75% of Americans don't want either one. If the party that moves first to choose a different candidate wins.
See, the trouble with your country, mate, is your politics is cartoonish, whereas over here, it's very, very
so
impressive.
straight and
Very
narrow.
sophisticated. We don't have party infighting, not at all.
Anyway, thanks, Greg. Greg
Thank you.
Swenson there.